Dustin, thank you so much for coming on the AIM podcast.
Yeah, I'm pumped, man. Hey, I'm honored to be on, man. I'm excited to chop it up. I ain't seen you in a while. I know you're down south doing big things, man. So I'm excited to kind of us dive a little bit deeper beneath the surface today.
Let's do it, man. I couldn't be more excited for this episode. And I'm gonna take you up on that because I am down here in Florida right now. But listen, I want to set up a time to come visit you, bro, because you have one of the coolest ice barrel sauna setups in the country, bro. I'd put you up there in the top 10 in the country. You have an awesome setup up there.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's all kinds of cool spots that people have, so I don't really know how I stack up, top 10, top five, but I know it's the perfect spot for me. I really just had a vision for it whenever right around the time when we were building our home, over 2 years ago or whatever, was right around the time my guy Brian Peters really first introduced me to the contrast therapy, and so I kind of had this vision. Originally I thought we were going to build a house kind of at the back of the property, like on the edge of the ravine, and then we ended up building the house more in the middle of the property. And so then right away, I kind of knew, I was like, no, the edge of the ravine in the woods there, that's where the recovery station is going to go. So
So,
that was
so
really one of my first big projects, even before I started the landscaping or anything like that. We were only in the house for a few months, and as soon as the snow was off the ground, I was out there digging holes and building the sauna deck, and got that shipped in from Redwood Outdoors and got it together. It's coming together really good. And I don't know if you saw, but we built an outdoor gym out there too. We just got that together the last week or two. We call it the Gut Check Compound. So we got the calisthenics park. We got I got all my where I chop my firewood and stuff that's out there. I built a little like rock patio, and then we get the sauna and the ice barrels out there too. So
dude, okay, you sold me, bro. I'm coming. You just let me know when.
dude, you're welcome anytime, man. We got plenty of room for you.
Dude, well, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate your kindness to come on the show, and I really appreciate your kindness to just be such a positive light in the world. I think I'm excited to dive into your story and hear more kind of about your background, your upbringing that got you in the position you're in now. But man, you're a man of many talents. I know you wear many hats from being a coach, pouring into these athletes, really from the youth all the way to professional athletes, and also running and operating businesses. Like you do a lot of amazing things. And on this podcast, our goal is to bring on guests that have extreme ambition and really are just maximizing their life. And hopefully that encourages, inspires other people to do the same thing. And so, dude, I'm really excited, but I would love to kind of hear more about the context of your background and how you kind of got into sports and training, and how that kind of ultimately led up to what you're doing now.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, you gave me some good compliments there, and the one thing I would disagree with though is you said I'm a man of many talents. I always say that I'm a man of no talent. I don't really have anything, any type of special talent or any real special gifts. I've just I've made a career out of working hard and trying to teach people how to work hard and get the most out of themselves, and that's really all it is. I might even still have it in my Instagram bio. I made this quote a long time ago. It said, "An ordinary man that gives extraordinary effort." And that's kind of the ethos that I try to live by. And because I think we can get caught up in when we think about talent or who's predestined to do this or predestined to do that, and then it becomes easier to put limits on ourselves and say, I could say, well, I'm not very tall. I'm only 5'8". I'm not very big, so that means I'm not really that strong. And then you start to kind of box yourself in. But if you realize, no matter what area you're going into, whether it's fitness, whether it's music, whether it's business, whatever it is, like, okay, if I can just learn how to be consistent and really try hard and give honest effort when I meet people and when I form relationships, and always try to focus on helping someone. When I meet someone, I think, all right, how can I help this person? How can I impact this person? And then in the business world, that inevitably leads to success and money for yourself, because if you focus on helping others, then they're going to want to help you, and they're going to want to introduce you to whether it's I have a good relationship with Wyatt, so he wanted to introduce me to you, and now through my relationship with you, who knows where that's going to lead to for someone else. So I think,
Sure.
you know, I know I'm kind of getting us off track here, but if we really just focus on, putting our best foot forward, and I'm sorry, hold on for one second. Oh, so look at that thing that popped up on the screen. Sorry, there was like a pop up that came up, so I've been able to see your face this whole time.
No
Oh,
worries.
yeah, I can only see your chin and the top of your hat, so it was kind of weird talking. But my podcast producer came back and got off the screen.
No
So,
worries.
but anyway, so with what I do, just a little bit of a background. You know, I I grew up, lifting weights in my dad's garage in rural Eastern Ohio. Back in in the '80s and early '90s. There was no social media then. It was kind of like, if you wanted to learn about working out, either hopefully you had a dad like mine who lifted weights, and he had the Arnold Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding and let me read that. And so I got a little bit older, and me and Corey G hooked up in high school and started lifting weights together. And we would get the muscle magazines, the old Flex magazines and stuff, and you would learn stuff. And we kind of always we loved hanging out in the garage and lifting. It was like my house after school was a place everyone would go to lift weights. And even my buddies that didn't lift weights, they would be out in the driveway, shooting hoops or doing hacky sack or whatever. And it was we loved to do it, but it was also kind of more out of boredom, and we didn't really have a lot of other options, where we lived. So at least it was something kind of positive that we could focus our energy into. And so I think I never really thought that there would be a possibility that I could do something like that for a living. Like I said, there was no influencers to look to, or I'd never even heard of a personal trainer. The closest thing I knew of as a strength coach was the fact that my dad would teach me and my buddies how to lift weights. And then we did have a strength coach at school, but he was, the football coach. So you didn't really even think of it as a separate position. It was just the strength, the football coach would teach the guys how to work out or whatever. So, but then as we got older and we got into college, Corey G was my roommate up here at Ohio State. I was at the time thought I was going to be an English teacher, and he ended up, getting a job as a personal trainer, and he got me a job there at that local gym, working the desk, and he ended up having a kind of a falling out with the manager there. So he said, you know what, I'm going to leave and start my own training studio. And I remember thinking, well, how is that going to work? You're going to have your own studio? Like, why is anyone going to come there? I really had no concept about it. So when I was still in school, he ended up talking me into, kind of training clients under him, part time. This is back in 2000, maybe 2001. And by the time I graduated college in 2002, I was already kind of making as much money as a personal trainer as I would as an English teacher. And I thought, well, fuck this. I'm not going to grad school now. I want to do this. This is so much more fun. We're listening to rap music and teaching weightlifting. And, you know, now when I look back at it, this is still, pre-internet days. Um, our understanding of how to train someone, or strength training in general, and I'd never even heard the term energy systems. I didn't know anything compared to what I know now. But I guess we at least understood a little bit about bodybuilding because of the way we like to train, and what we'd read about or whatever. So rather than go on to grad school, I ended up just kind of training full time with him. And then after about a year, a little gym in Pataskala, which is where I ended up buying my first house, about a year after college. This little hole in the wall gym, and went out of business. And it was just kind of one of those things where, like, maybe we should buy this thing and, like, really try to do something. So that was the original old school gym. We opened in 2003. So this year will make 20 years now that we've had, some version of the old school gym. There was a little one first, and then 2008 we moved to a, bigger location. And then I guess this would be 2, maybe 3 years ago now, we've been in the current location, which we're a private facility now with Max Effort Muscle or Supplement Company, and the gym here under one roof. So there's been a lot of stuff that's happened in the last 20 years in between now and then. I ended up becoming a strength coach for the wrestling team at Ohio State, my alma mater, which I was never skilled enough as an athlete to actually wrestle for Ohio State, but I think just having a wrestling background kind of allowed me to understand how to have a better understanding of how to train athletes for the sport. And so if you would have told me, when we first started that first training studio, like, hey, someday you'll be a strength coach at Ohio State, you'll win a national title, the only team national title in school history, and
Wow.
you'll have 3 Big Ten rings, and you get to coach all these athletes and Olympians and everything, I would have been like, there's no way it's even possible, So there's been some really cool things that have happened over the past 20 years.
Dude, that's incredible. It's so cool to see what you've been able to accomplish really through hard work and grit. And you know what I love, and this is why I'm so excited to talk to you about, is just how people can use different. Everyone's called to a different passion. Everyone's called to a different thing that really fills them up. You've been able to leverage fitness and make such a huge impact on so many people's lives, from the personal training to the athletes to winning national championships. Like, it's crazy. But how I want to talk about, because I think this is what will be relatable for people. How have you used your passion, what you found, fell in love with, to make a deeper impact in people
Yeah.
through that vehicle?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me is that I know what weightlifting did for me as an individual is it made me understand how to work hard. it made me, toughen me up. It kind of really taught me over the years, you know, how to be a man and how to work hard. I think when I was young, probably pre-workout days, 12, 13, whatever, whenever I first started lifting weights, up to that point, I had to do work around the house. I had to, shovel out the horse's pen. I had to take the garbage out and stuff, but I always hated it. And I didn't really understand how the correlation between hard physical work and the rewards that come from it. But I think once I started lifting weights, I started to understand like, okay, well, if I put in this effort, like here, I'm going to get these results. I'm going to, whether it's the weight moving up or I get to, feel more confident in myself. Cause I was always very small when I was young. I was always the smallest kid in class, was not very athletic because I didn't play sports until I was a little bit older. So the confidence that I got from that, I know it really just changed the way I perceive myself. And so that's really always kind of my biggest aim when I work with athletes, and even kids, maybe even before they're athletes, is to get them to understand hard work and get them to believe in themselves. And I've had athletes that have went on to achieve great things at the Division I level. I had 4 kids in my high school group that won state titles this year. I've had to achieve all these great things, but honestly, the most rewarding stuff is to see the kid who comes in, who's not very strong, who's not very sure himself, it's not very confident, and to see the change in their personality. Maybe that first time they finally bench 135 when they were really started out 9 months ago, like barely being able to bench the bar, or the first time they were able to pull 225 off the floor, and to see, not just the physical change, but to see the way they interact with their peers and to see that they're confident. I know that that's the type of change that is permanent. And I just had a graduation party I had to go to this weekend for one of my athletes that I've trained from 7th grade all the way up. And this kid, was a good athlete and becoming a pretty good football player and a pretty decent wrestler. And was a very strong kid. He was probably a 500-pound deadlifter in high school. And his dad, who I'd met maybe once or twice over the years, he came and sat and talked to me for maybe a half hour at the thing. And he said, you did a great job with Tanner. And I said, yeah, oh yeah, he was a great kid, and we kind of went in, and I was just really just talking to him about it on the surface level. And he looked at me, he said, no, he said, what you did, he said, just it transformed him as a young man.
Wow.
And I think that, you know, that's really the bigger impact than that's bigger than the deadlift PRs and the state titles and all this stuff. If I can, and I know I said earlier that I don't have any talents. I guess I lied. I do think that my talent is I can take kids and teach them how to work hard and how to value the effort that they put into stuff. There's probably strength coaches out there that are smarter than me. I'm sure there are. I mean, I have my CSCS. I've been doing this for a long time, but I'm not the smartest guy. There's people that understand the X's and O's better than me. But I would think what I'm world class at and what I would put up my ability up at against anyone in the world is that I can take any athlete and get them to want to work hard when I'm not watching. You know,
Mhm.
you can be a drill sergeant. Anyone can be a drill sergeant and yell and make someone do something. You can force someone to push through something that's uncomfortable. But to get them to do that when no one's watching, when your back's turned, or maybe even when it doesn't matter, that's the hard part. That's the sweet spot. So I think that I would like to think when it's all said and done, and maybe someday when my son's running the business for me and he's the one training athletes, and when people talk about me, I'm hoping that they'll say, you know what, he was able to impact a lot of wrestlers and athletes and was able to teach them how to work hard. And that in and of itself really help impact the rest of their life, not just the sports world.
Wow, dude, that's good. That gets me fired up, man. And it's so cool to get, the opportunity. I'm so fortunate to have the opportunity to have these type of conversations on the show because I really hope that the people listening can take so much from that. I personally, I mean, I was telling you before we got on, not in depth, but I was fortunate to play college basketball at the Division I level at Western Carolina, and I transferred in from Roanoke my freshman year, which is a Division III school. Transferred in, and I had to redshirt because of the rules, and so because of that, I couldn't play. I spent every single day with Jim Wilson, who at the time was my strength and conditioning coach, and he poured into me. This dude was relatable. But I could feel like there was just this. He just inserted his confidence into me and helped me learn how to train hard. And that was the first time. I'd always really liked fitness and lifting, but that was the first time I was like, holy crap, like this really translates. Like, yes, I'm getting stronger in here and it's going to help me on the court, but this is translating to my work ethic in the classroom and to wanting to start businesses. and the seeds that he planted, probably not even knowing, fully being intentional about it, like the seeds he planted set me up to do some of the things I'm doing now. And it's because of those interactions. And so for you to be able to have that same impact on so many athletes that some probably have told you or their parents have told you, but the amount of seeds you've planted for people to go out and do great things is just, it's so cool to think about that.
Well, what that makes me think of, and I think a lot of people don't really realize this, but at the college level, especially when someone comes in, if they transfer in or if they're redshirting or when they come in over the summer, they enroll early, the strength and conditioning coach is going to have more touches with them than their actual position coach or their head coach or whatever. And so potentially a bigger impact on them, especially like, during a redshirt year or whatever.
Sure.
And so just imagine how different not only your sports career, but also maybe your development as a young man would be if you didn't have a good bond with that strength coach. If he didn't, if he kind of looked at you like, this guy's transferring in, I'm not going to put any effort into him or pour any energy or give him any of these life lessons. So just, think of like how different that whole experience could have been for you. And also now imagine, I'm sure you guys are like lifelong friends now, right? Probably the
Yep.
amount of respect you have for him, he's probably almost like a older brother or father figure to you.
100%. No, we have a great relationship, and it's so cool. Like I just mentioned, just how people can use the things they're passionate about as a vehicle to make lifelong impact in people's lives, which is ultimately, like you said, it's so much more than just pulling a PR, right? It's like, how can we make people better? How can we instill confidence? How can we motivate people to work hard and create healthy habits that then they go out and reach other people with? Like that is the formula of like success. And it's just crazy to think like if we had more people committed to that process, what we could accomplish together.
It's really such a simple thing, but I feel like, okay, if I can teach kids to, show up on time, to be able to do the warm-ups unprompted, to take things serious, to encourage their teammates, to be consistent on their nutrition, all these little things that are important for them to progress in the weight room, progress as an athlete. If they can do those things, then they're going to be successful in high school, in college, in the classroom. They're going to be successful when they go out into the workforce. I want to teach them, to be hardworking and respectful. And if they can do that, then they're going to be a good husband and a good father. Okay. A good citizen of the world, because just being a good athlete or being strong or being good at sports is not enough, because really, your life as an athlete, at least as a competitive athlete, for most people, it's numbered. You're only going to be on the court playing basketball for so long to where there's people actually showing up to watch and there's a scoreboard where it really counts. If you're lucky, you still get to do those things with your friends or whatever as life goes on. But if you don't take those life lessons that help you develop as an athlete and then put that into your home life in your career and things, then you've kind of missed the point of all of it. So
Totally agree. I totally agree. Where do you think that starts though as a leader? Because one thing I want to do is try to give these our listeners like some tangible things they can like really practice. You talk about all the right things that I agree with and 100% agree with you on what you just kind of laid the foundation with. But when you're trying to pour into someone, when you're trying to make that impact, show them hard work, show them how to show up on time, like how do you tangibly actually like put that into action?
well, the most important thing is you have to lead by example. So if I'm always, late to my athletes' workouts, how can I expect them to be on time? You
Mm,
know, if I'm always, while I'm coaching them, if I'm over here on my phone checking Instagram, how can I tell them to stay on task and keep their phones away? If I'm not, if I don't speak highly and be respectful to my wife, how can I expect them to treat their girlfriends nice or whatever? So I think it's just you really have to lead by example, and I've always, you know, I think that was the way I was able to really insert, or I shouldn't say insert, assert myself as a strength coach at the Division I level. When I got the opportunity with Ohio State, it was because I had trained an athlete, Tommy Rollins, who had was a kind of a legend in the Ohio State wrestling world, and then through him, I was able to get a chance at the regional training center down there to work with the athletes. So day one, I have always been an Ohio State wrestling fan. I'm an alum of the university, but I was not a good wrestler. I was a very average high school wrestler. So I'm walking into this room with guys who are, either legends or future legends in the sport. Every guy on the staff is a former Division I wrestler or an Olympian or whatever. So it's in a way like if you think of it from a wrestling standpoint or from a talent standpoint, I don't belong in a room like that. So right away I said, all right, the way I can get these athletes to trust me is to show them that I'm willing to do everything I ask them to do. So
Mm,
right away, I would not just train them; I would train with them. And when it was preseason and they would have to run the stadium at 6 a.m. and the other coaches are there blowing the whistle, I would go and actually run with them. And when you're a Division I athlete at the peak of your abilities and you're 21 years old, you don't want to lose to the old strength coach who's twice your age, you know? So I would
right.
get in there and I would push those guys and so right now I thought like, all right, effort is the only way I can buy their respect. I can't buy their respect with my abilities because I'm not a great wrestler. I'm not a great athlete, but I was willing to show them my grit and my toughness and my commitment to my fitness level. And really, it allowed me, it made me step my game up too. I was, strong and fit before that, but wasn't training with elite athletes. I was training with my buddies here at the gym or
Sure.
whatever. In a room like that at Ohio State, every one of these guys, whether they came from Ohio or Pennsylvania or California, where they were the best of the best. So to be in a room full of athletes like that, it made me step my game up because I'm like, I can't go in there and give half-assed effort if I want to expect, you know, these guys to try as hard as I need them to. When you some of the things that I do, in here, it's easy to take a kid who's on JV and be able to raise his bar so maybe he can make varsity this year. But how do you take a kid that's a three-time All-American and get him to be a little bit better to make sure he's a four-time All-American? Because
Yeah.
now we're splitting hairs with people that are already, maybe they quote unquote reached their genetic potential when they were 15 years old, and now they're so skilled, and everyone is so good at that level. So again, just kind of circling back, I think leading by example, in the weight room, leading by example, with the way you conduct your life, with the way you live your life. You know, I remember one time there was a guy that Ohio State brought in to kind of consult, and he came and kind of did this seminar or whatever. And on paper, this guy was real smart. He worked with a bunch of NFL guys out in, in the Laguna Beach area, and they brought him in to do some speed training stuff. And some of the stuff, I thought was great, but some of it I thought was a bunch of hot air. And I'll never forget one of my athletes looked at me and he said, "I never trust a strength coach with skinny arms and a beer belly." And I just kind of laughed. I was like, all right, so at least I'm not losing these guys to what this guy is preaching, because they kind of saw through like, yeah, maybe on paper this guy was really smart and worked with a bunch of athletes or whatever, but they looked at him and their first thought was, this guy doesn't live the life. Now
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that to be a good strength coach you have to have a six pack or anything. That's not, because there's plenty of guys with six packs out there that don't know how to inspire or whatever. But they looked at it right away and said, this guy doesn't live and lead by example.
Dude, I love that. I love how you talk about that because I think a lot of times we live in a world where you can say whatever you want. Like you can say this, say that, but if you're not backing it up with action, it's just empty. And I think, when you compare them, that's a powerful combination. I think using your voice, communicating, putting words into action, I think is really, really powerful. But if you're not actually living by the things you talk about or stand for, it's obviously not going to be as effective. Another piece that I'd love to dive into about leadership with you, and this is something I think is really, really important for all teams or all organizations, people that are coming together to try to accomplish a goal, but you really can see it in sports. Sports is just such a good way to like really, there's so many parallels between sports and real life, but like in sports you can really like fine tune and really focus in on certain elements. But this idea of like buy-in, of like getting people to come together to really believe in a goal or a mission. And I think no matter what you're doing in life, like this can be super relatable, but like how have you seen success as a leader, as a strength coach, as a business person in creating buy-in with your team, with the people you're leading, with your athletes? I think it's probably somewhat similar to what you said, but like, are there any other tactics that you've seen be successful to really create that culture of like people coming together to believe in the vision of what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I think I'll use another example that I learned, coaching at Ohio State. So the head coach there, Tom Ryan, he's probably been there maybe 15 years now. He'll have a Hall of Fame career. Like I said, he won the national titles. He's had a ton of All-Americans. He's really brought Ohio State wrestling, to the forefront of the wrestling world. And so he was kind of already a legend when I got there, and so I was really intrigued to learn from him. And when I first started working down there, they would have the staff meetings it was either every Monday or every Tuesday. And so I would have to go to it. And maybe the first, 10 or 15 minutes, they would always do the strength conditioning stuff first. So that way, if I wanted to leave after that, I could leave. But I would always stay for the whole thing because the main reason was I wanted to watch how Tom managed the other coaches and how he interacted with his staff and how he kind of led these coaches who all in their own right were great athletes and great coaches and had their own egos and own ideas. And one of the first things that I picked up from him is that, and this is probably one of his gifts and why he's been so successful, is he makes everyone feel like their opinion matters and like they're important and they have some skin in the game. And I think it can be easy, like as a coach, to always look to, your, say as a strength coach, to look to your strongest athlete or your most experienced athlete. And if you're always doing that and, you're only asking for the opinion of the strong guy and maybe the new guy or the kid who's not that talented doesn't feel like they have a say in what music we're listening to that day or, hey, whatever it is, then they're going to have a hard time buying in because they can sense maybe the favoritism. And I really felt like that was a talent of, Coach Ryan. I would feel like sometimes, someone would ask a question and I know that he knows the answer or he has an opinion about which way it would go, but he would look to me and be like, well, Dustin, what do you think? What do you think we should do as far as, conditioning on Thursday? And I know he already knows what he wants to do, but whether he really wanted my opinion or not, he made me feel as if my opinion mattered. So I think that, you know, being a good leader and getting buy-in, you have to make everyone feel like they have some skin in the game. And I think that's something we really focus on here at Max Effort with our company is that everyone kind of has their own lanes. We have a content guy. We have a guy who like kind of handles the website. We have another guy who's we call him the graphic gangster. He does all of our, ad work and all our, graphics and stuff like that. But we don't only ask, Cole's opinion when it's something dealing with graphics. He still needs to have some input on other stuff too. Even though I handle a lot of the social media, but I still, Corey might ask my opinion on something else. So we all kind of work together and we all feel like our opinion matters in all areas. And I think then, rather than just focus on our area and saying, well, I don't care what goes on with the podcast because that's not my area. No, we all kind of feel like we have ownership in all of it and our opinion matters in all of it.
That's so good, dude. I appreciate you sharing that because I think at the end of the day, everything you said is spot on. If people can't identify or have full awareness of their value, how are they going to bring anything to the table? Like you have to identify what is your skill set. And that's again, it's cool. I don't want to use it too many examples about sports, but it's like every player on the team is not a point guard. Every player on the team is not going to catch the ball, drop step, dunk on somebody. Like everyone has a unique position, a unique piece of value, like with y'all's team, with your supplement company, like if you're not bringing your unique value to the table, your team is suffering. And that's honestly a selfish way to be. Like everyone needs to understand that you have gifts, you have talents, you have resources, you have experiences that you've been through, and you're able to bring a very unique puzzle piece to the equation that's ultimately going to put the team in a better position to accomplish the bigger goal of what you guys are setting out to do. But good leaders, to your point, I think can really draw that out. Like, how can you identify what is your unique value and how can you use that to the best of your ability to plug it into our equation?
Absolutely, man. I think it's such a basic kind of human need. Like we need to feel important. We need to feel respected and important. And I think that you know, everyone does have talents. So maybe that is the job of the leader to kind of pull out what those talents are and make every one of those, from the point guards all the way down to the role players, make each one of them feel important in their own way. So that way they buy in, they work harder, and they kind of help raise the bar for everyone.
100%, 100%. Another big piece of buy-in that I've seen be successful, and I've been on teams where there wasn't this element, and I've been on teams where there was this element, but it's just this concept of trust. And it's like, how can you establish trust as a leader? How can you do different things to get the people that to really believe that you genuinely have their best interest at heart? And the best teams I've been around have been with guys who are the leaders who are like coming together and saying, look, let's suffer together. Let's go through the highs together, but let's also go through the lows together. And I think the ones that can really battle through the lows and not splinter off, I think those are the teams that come out stronger. Have you seen any sort of that element like be a part of the equation for you as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think like when we're talking about the weight room and maybe just sports in general, is like we can't just celebrate, the wins. I mean, so we have to also like we have to celebrate effort. So when someone, you know, when you know someone is putting their best foot forward, even if it's maybe not leading to success right away, you still have to celebrate that. Um, I think that it can be easy too to always want to champion the ones that win, the ones that have the big numbers win the most games or the most matches or whatever. But you have to kind of look at things in the, from the perspective of like, all right, what is this maybe small victory that on the scheme of things doesn't mean anything, maybe locally or nationally, but what does it mean to that person? Is this a big deal for them? Then we need to celebrate it, and we need to make sure we reward their effort, even if they fell a little bit short or whatever.
For sure. No, that's so good, man. That's so good. I want to slightly pivot here. I want to talk about the business side of what you do because I think again, you have so much value to bring to this conversation. I loved hearing your whole process with leadership and training and all the things you've done from a coaching perspective. And I think there's going to be overlap here, but I'd love to hear more about your entrepreneurial side and how you've been able to start an incredible gym, how you've been a partner in a successful supplement company, and what that kind of process looked like getting into business.
Yeah, so I think I'd mentioned earlier, Corey and I grew up together, and then I went to work for him initially when I was still in school, and then we opened our first gym together. And it's one of those things where typically people say like, don't go into business with your friends, or they'll say, blood and money don't mix. And him and I have been friends so long, we basically are brothers, even though we're not technically blood related. But him and I, we have always done really well in business. We've never had any real disagreements or anything like that. And I think it really stems from we both genuinely, want each other to succeed. We kind of each have, even though we're in the same, arena, we have our own, different lanes. We have our own different specialties, our own different styles. So I'm always rooting for him, and he's always rooting for me. I think that when friends, or just even business partners in general, where they can kind of, where it can kind of go off track is if it's like, all right, Doug, you and I are partners, but it's almost like we're kind of competing against each other.
Mhm.
And when it's, healthy competition is good. Competition, kind of born out of jealousy is a bad thing. And I think that's why a lot of friends are not able to, able to work together, or at least not able to be successful together long term. So I kind of forget what your original question was here, but I think
Well, I'm glad
what
you share that because I think that's super valuable. But yeah, I would love to know like what was your process like making the transition, or even not, I know because you're still a coach. So I'm not, maybe not the transition's the right word, but just starting to add more business opportunities into the mix. And I would love to just kind of hear more of the origin story of you getting involved with the gym and the supplement company.
Oh man, yeah. So there's been so many different kind of iterations of the gym over the years, but that the gym has always been the constant. So we started out our gym originally. First he had that personal training studio. Like I said, right after college, him and I partnered up and bought our first small gym. And at that point, we were both basically just personal trainers. We had a small gym. The gym itself was probably losing money, but we were making money training clients full time. Sun up to sundown, and it was mostly general fitness. Weight loss, bodybuilding style workouts, kind of things like that. So really you had the gym and you had the personal training on top of it. And then I think we went into supplement sales. So we started selling, other companies' supplements, on top of that. So now we had another revenue stream. And then I think maybe I started doing some small athlete class. We started trying to, because if you're in the gym business, if your business is only going to be gym memberships, you're not going to be in business very long. You have to find kind of these other revenue streams to come in. And, in those early days, there was no social media or anything yet. So marketing was very tough. We would print flyers and go to Kroger, go to the grocery store and put them on people's, windshields. And we would go to, like local, like, chamber of commerce meetings and try to meet other business owners and network and things like that. So it was very tough to drum up business. And, we were doing some cool stuff then, but no one really knew about it because, there was no social media. We'd give out, my business card had my picture from a natural bodybuilder. So I'm like in a Speedo on my business card. I mean, kind of hilarious to think about now, but I mean, there was no, now people can go to your Instagram and that's how you get kind of your verification as far as they could see like, okay, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing or whatever. But back then, you would hand out business cards, you would take them everywhere. I'd always have a box in my car. No matter where I was at, I would go put some on people's windshields and stuff. So anyway, so in those early days, we started kind of trying to stack other revenue streams on top of what we were already doing. And I can't remember the timeline here, but maybe 2006, 2007, around there, Corey had an opportunity with another guy where I think he was originally sponsored by a supplement company or something. And then he ended up partnering with one of the guys that had formed that company, and they started a company called Muscle Farm. And Muscle Farm, if you remember from like the late, kind of 2010, like around there, ended up, blowing up and it was huge. So him and, his old partner had started that company, ended up sponsoring the UFC kind of right when the UFC was on its way up. They sponsored Tiger Woods. They had a deal with Arnold. I mean, they were probably the biggest supplement company in the world at one point. And him and I, that was separate from what him and I were doing. But I started doing some content and stuff for them, content specifically for wrestling. And then, that company got very big. They didn't really have their arms around it anymore at that point. It was a publicly traded company. He was able to kind of find the door and the exit strategy. And that might have been like, 2014, 2015, somewhere around there. And he kind of talked to me and said, hey, once my non-compete is up, he said, you and I are going to start another supplement company. He said, but we're going to keep it small. He's like, I've kind of learned from, bigger is not always better. We want to make sure that we can kind of focus on the customer, focus on content, focus on being able to help our customers, not just from a supplement standpoint, but also from a training standpoint. And we'll be able to, really keep the brand in line with what we're already doing here at the gym. And so that was when, once his non-compete was up after a year or two or whatever, we started Max Effort Muscle, and here we are, however many years later now. It's went by kind of fast, actually.
Wow, dude, that's amazing. That's just, I love hearing the stories of how people get involved in the business. I think it's fascinating because everyone's story is so different. You guys talk about with this company, like the idea or the I guess the theme of just wanting to take care of the customer, to be more intentional, to really, bigger is not always greater. I think we live in a world where everyone's always like scale, 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 grow, grow, grow. But like, how have you guys been successful at like really pouring into the customer and also like building like a really strong community or base with the brand?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is with with the training content kind of in tangent with the supplements, So we do a lot of content on the YouTube channel and on our Instagram and stuff like that. And then, Corey has his fitness app. I have my app, so we have something similar, but kind of geared towards different styles of training. So when someone comes into the brand at Max Effort Muscle, it's not just, hey, we're going to order protein or pre-workout. It's okay. They can kind of dive a little bit deeper and say, all right, here's the workouts. Here's the nutrition that we need to be on. Here's the mindset stuff. So we have a lot of, different podcasts. I have a wrestling based podcast. We have another coaches clinic. We call it the Coaches Clinic podcast with myself as a wrestling / strength coach. We have a baseball coach on there, a soccer coach, and then Corey, who's a world renowned powerlifting coach. And we talk all kinds of different issues that are related to coaching and business and life in general. Because all those roads kind of intersect. So I think that's the biggest thing is that with us, with Max Effort Muscle is it's kind of a lifestyle brand versus just being a supplement company. Yes, the supplements is the kind of the face of the brand, but we have the training, the nutrition, the mindset stuff to go along with it. So when someone kind of comes into the brand, I think they're a lot less likely to leave and try something else because they're getting everything else along with it.
Totally makes sense. That's cool. It's cool how you're able to touch different, aspects of their life with one umbrella brand, but also make, several different touch points of impact and yeah, provide value in so many ways.
Yeah, man, I think there's a lot more, longevity for us as a brand. Some of the customers, because I always, you always see them, pinging back and forth on social media and stuff. I think they've probably been with us maybe even since the Muscle Farm days, and they kind of migrated over with Corey. Because with Muscle Farm, that was one of the ways they built that company was that he did, free workouts every day through their social media when they first started. And so a lot of those people kind of migrated over, and now those same people, when we launched in 2015 or 2016, they're still buying stacks every month and still interacting with us, still following the workouts and all that. So it's been a cool process.
From someone who has been in the fitness industry before social media has been, what it is today, how have you seen the industry? And you can take this in whatever direction you want, from a coaching standpoint, from a entrepreneurial standpoint with your brand. How have you seen the power of social media be leveraged to like just kind of change the environment of what we're currently like having access to?
Yeah, so I mean, number one, it's incredible the amount of knowledge, good and bad, that people have access to through social media. It's like I said, when we were younger, I had my Arnold's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding. We would go get, Flex or Muscle and Fitness magazine. That was really the only way to learn. So
Wow.
what like my kids that I train have access to knowledge wise now. I mean, every world renowned strength coach is right there on Instagram. They can literally learn from anyone in the world. So that is pretty amazing. Um, Downsides to it too is that I think there's probably there's a lot of, either coaches or fitness, entrepreneurs or people that want to be influencers that have kind of put the cart, um, the cart, what's the saying, the cart before the horse or whatever now, where they feel like, all right, now, I like to work out. Maybe I'm training a couple clients at the local gym. I'm going to start doing content. And they're speaking as if they're an expert when in reality, just because you worked out in high school and you've lifted for a couple years and now you've trained one client doesn't mean that you're an expert, so you kind of have to watch, as someone who consumes social media. I think you have to watch who you're taking advice from, and that, again, that's not to say that I'm the expert on every, area of fitness and that everyone should listen to me, but you have to just really watch who you're getting your knowledge from, because just because someone maybe has a ripped six pack doesn't mean they're going to understand how to teach you how to train for a stronger core, or just because someone is a fast runner doesn't mean they can actually teach you how to be fast. So I think you have to take things with a grain of salt and really kind of put some thought into who you're going to learn from. Oh, and also too, like, you know my boxing coach, I remember he had a saying, and he would say this whenever we would go to other boxing gyms to get sparring or whatever. He would say, when you work with another coach, he said, chew up the meat and spit out the fat. He said, there's always something you can learn from someone, but that doesn't mean that it's all high quality meat. So I
Mm.
think it's kind of a good way to look at social media when you consume it. Chew up the meat, spit out the fat. Most people have something of value they can give you, but that doesn't mean all of it is good.
That's a good way to look at a lot of things.
Right, right.
That's awesome, man. Dude, well, listen, I've had an absolute blast on this episode. I'm so thankful for your time and you just coming on here to just share all the amazing experiences that you've been able to have throughout your life and the impact you're having, dude. It's so so cool to me when we get to, man, it's such a blessing to get to have these conversations and just hear from people that are really doing it. Like it's one thing to talk about it, but you're seeing the impact and I'm seeing it from afar, just the many, many athletes and the people that you're touching. So I just want to thank you, man. And kind of the last question I have for you, and we try to ask this in different variations, but if you could, if there's like one piece of advice, one piece of value that you could leave us with, that's something that's been a huge pillar in helping you just stay driven and motivated to just go out and serve and have this purpose with your life that you've kind of experienced through your life, what do you think that would be?
So I grew up in a blue collar household. My mom was a nurse. My dad worked in the steel mill. And growing up, I would always see my dad would come home from the mill, and it wouldn't matter whether it was 90 degrees out or 10 degrees out. He would come home and he would go to the garage and lift weights. And then he would, we heated our house with a wood burner when I was young, and so he would lift weights, and then he would chop firewood, and then he would come in and you know, have family time or whatever. And kind of the same thing with my mom. She would come home from whether it was when she was in nursing school or once she was eventually a nurse. She would come home, she would go for a hike, she would do her yoga meditation up in the woods, and come in and spend time with us, help us with our homework or whatever. And so we had a very blue collar lifestyle, and it's something that I feel like we have kind of brought into our career and a kind of our brand. We always say we're a blue collar brand and a blue collar lifestyle. And someone asked me one time, they're like, well, you don't work in a factory. They're like, what does that mean? I said, well, blue collar mentality means, the willingness to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, regardless of how you feel. And that means, doesn't matter whether I feel like training today or whether I feel like pouring into my athletes. It's what needs to be done, and it's what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to complain about it. So when my dad would come home from the steel mill and it was 10 degrees out in February, he didn't say, oh, it's too cold to work out in our unheated detached garage today. No, he needed to work out, so he would go work out, and then if he needed to chop wood, he would chop wood. And like I said, the same thing with my mom. She would come home, and if there was a foot of snow on the ground, she would still go for her hike and do her meditation because that's what she needed to do. So I think just if you can, look at things, whether it's your career, your family, your time in the gym, your content creation, whatever it is, and just think, I'm going to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, regardless of how I feel in that moment. I think that you'll find a lot of success in life.
Dude, let's go, man. You got me fired up, man. I love
Oh
that.
man, that was a good one. I might have to put, we might have to clip that one and put it out on my Instagram or something. That was good. I don't know if I've ever really kind of broke it down like that for anyone before. So I'm glad I was able to share it with you today.
Thank you for sharing with me. I think it's awesome, and I think it's important to be in tune with your emotion, but sometimes I think we need to detach them when it inhibits us from accomplishing the things that we know are supposed to happen. And I think a lot of times your happiness is all dependent on the happenings that are, going on in your life, what's going good, what's going bad. But sometimes you got to just say, listen, I got to go to work. I got to get it
Mm.
done. And you illustrated that very, very well. So thank you so much, Dustin. You're the man. How can people find you? Please just, yeah, plug all the things you're doing. You got an incredible podcast. I know you've got a couple. Would love for you to share with the audience a little bit more ways that they can connect with you and all the cool stuff that you're doing.
For sure. I appreciate that, man. So the easiest way is my Instagram. And so it's at Coach Myers underscore gut check. So it's CoachMyers underscore gut check. That's kind of the easiest way to find me, connect with me, kind of see what I got going on in the gym. Check out our supplement brand at Max Effort Muscle. Follow our Instagram on there. You kind of see we're always doing some type of crazy skits and crazy content, but also putting out stuff of value as well. If you go to maxeffortmuscle.com, you can kind of check out the products that we have. I also have a training app. It's kind of geared towards wrestlers, but there's a lot of there's a lot of content on there for non-wrestlers. Someone that just wants to train hard, or the wrestling parents if they get the app for their kids or whatever. And you can download that at coachmyersstrength.com. So anyway, would love to you know touch up, link up with any of you guys. If you got any questions, just kind of shoot me a DM or anything like that. And Doug, I'll tell you what, man, I can't wait for you to come back to Ohio so we can actually train together. Glad we got to
Oh,
have this nice little conversation here. But come in, bring you to the old school gym. I'll put you through a nice wrestling workout. We'll go to my house for some sauna and ice recovery. It'll be a good day.
man, I would be so, so grateful to do that, dude. We will definitely have to set it up. And man, I just can't thank you enough for coming on the episode and coming on the podcast. You're awesome, dude. I look up to you, man. I love your energy. I love your just passion for life and the huge impact you're having, man. So thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.